Welcome to the Further Light Podcast, presented by Wisconsin Freemasonry, helping you accomplish your Masonic goals through education and more light. And now, I present to you, Brother Chris Ludke.
Listeners, scholars, brothers, this is Brother Chris Ludke, and today I want to continue our exploration of the history of Freemasonry. Last time we started in our exploration, and my primary text here is John Dickie's fantastic volume, The Craft, which really gets into this beautiful history of what is Freemasonry. And to me, it's beautiful because it brings up the muddy points. It gets rid of a lot of the mythology that we're used to when we deal with the history of Freemasonry. That mythology serves a purpose. It connects us, as we saw last time, to something greater. It gives us credibility at an early stage when we would have had very little, if any. But last time we dealt with things up through Anderson's constitutions, up through the explosion of the craft, really around 1770, give or take. And today I want to finish this exposition, this examination of the history of Freemasonry. And like so many things, this is not the definitive history. It is one history of Freemasonry. There are rabbit holes all over the place that you can dig down. I'm simply trying to give a brief glimpse and a historical, sort of secular glimpse at what Freemasonry is and its history as it develops. That being said, let's move on to the schism. Now, we've done an episode on the schism back in season 1, Moderns and Ancients, but I just want to touch on it here. By the middle of the 18th century, 1700s, we see tensions arising. Many English Masons felt that the premier Grand Lodge had modified rituals simply too freely and drifted from ancient practices, which is funny because those practices are probably between 50 and maybe 200 years old. It's not really ancient in the sense that it goes back to the classical world. They accused the Grand Lodge of being overly aristocratic and insufficiently traditional. In response, a new group formed, the Ancients. The Moderns and the Ancients operated rival Grand Lodges. The Moderns are the ones from whom we will take the hierarchy. The Ancients are the ones who will give us the final form of ritual, which we see today. And we would see these rival Grand Lodges existing for nearly 70 years. In fact, this is why in the United States we have Ancient Free and Accepted and we have Free and Accepted. Because it depended which Grand Lodge gave a state their charter, and then that state, if it was ancient, continued to give charters that were ancient. And so it just sort of continued on. Their disagreements over ritual, governance, and membership created confusion and frustration. Yet, Dickie argues that this conflict was incredibly productive. It forced Freemasonry to refine itself. It also highlights a fundamental truth. Freemasonry is always balancing tradition and innovation. In fact, all of society does the same. Do we change or do we not? Eventually, in 1813, the two rival groups will reunite to form the United Grand Lodge of England. And this unification standardized ritual practice and further solidified the structure of Blue Lodge Masonry. We come out of it stronger than we would have been otherwise. It's actually a really positive thing because it allows for that airing of grievances and then coming together to create a reconciled group that's going to be stronger than the two rivals would have ever been. Moving on to Freemasonry in the United States, no story of the Blue Lodge would be complete without addressing its development in North America. During the colonial period, Freemasonry grew steadily. Lodge became a place where merchants, lawyers, printers, landowners, and craftsmen gathered. Dickie noted that Freemasonry had a remarkable influence in the United States. Unlike in Europe, where Freemasonry tends to be very aristocratic throughout this period, in the United States, it becomes far more democratic. We see many founding fathers would become Masons, people like Benjamin Franklin, who becomes a Mason while he's simply a printer. And he, of course, helps publish Masonic writings in Philadelphia. George Washington participated in Masonic ceremonies throughout his life. More importantly, the ideals of Freemasonry, such as liberty of conscience, virtue, charity, and civic responsibility, align naturally with the political philosophies that shaped this new republic. After the Revolution, American Freemasonry expands rapidly. Lodges multiplied as settlers would move west. The Blue Lodge became a community anchor in many frontier towns, and while expansion brought its challenges, it also reinforced the identity of Freemasonry as a force for civic improvement. Now, that isn't going to be the case forever. Of course, we run into this little minor issue, the Morgan Affair. In the 1820s and 1830s, American Freemasonry faced one of its greatest crises, the disappearance of William Morgan, who threatened to expose Masonic rituals, ignited public suspicion. Newspapers sensationalized the story, and an entire anti-Masonic political party formed, while membership plummeted. Now, I've done a 6-part arc on Morgan and the Morgan Affair and the problems that come out of it. And the truth of the matter is, had it not been Morgan, had Morgan never happened, something would have. It was like a tinderbox. People were upset that these Masons seemed to get privileges because if you were a Mason and you appeared in front of a Masonic judge, you might be given some form of favoritism. And so people get incredibly upset at this. So don't read it as Morgan leads to. It's more along the lines, it's like World War I. This thing would have happened anyway. It just depends on what that spark would have been. If you don't kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914, then the spark would have been the development of the German Navy in 1915. It would have happened either way. Now, Dickie argues that this crisis, albeit completely devastating to Freemasonry, also transformed it. After the movement fades, lodges became more cautious, more charitable, more community-oriented. This is the time where we bring in the Pledge of Allegiance. We're the only country where Freemasons pledge allegiance to the nation. This is the time where we become far more democratic and we start bringing in blue-collar workers who want to join the fraternity. It's really a massive change in the United States. The Blue Lodge, of course, adapts and emerged as a stable and respected civic institution throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. So what is Blue Lodge Masonry today? How do we connect this long history to the experience of a modern entered apprentice, fellow craft, or master mason? Blue Lodge Masonry has become a school of virtue. Its structure is deliberately simple. The 3 degrees mirror the journey of human life itself, although as we've seen throughout the podcast, you can interpret that any number of different ways. The Lodge teaches morality through symbols, allegory, and shared experience. It is not a relic of medieval guilds nor purely Enlightenment creation. It's a synthesis of these elements as well as the conflicts that we've seen within it, creating a new form. It's a synthesis shaped by centuries of cultural, social, and intellectual change. John Dickie's central point is that Freemasonry survived because it is adaptable. It flourished because it speaks to something universal. People seek community, and I would argue that that is far more important today than it was 200 years ago. In the world of social media, where you can be at the same time isolated and have an audience of tens of thousands, people feel alone. They're looking for meaning. They want moral guidance, unburdened by rigidity or sectarianism. The Blue Lodge offers this through its rituals, its symbols, and its principles. It is not perfect, it is far from it. It has faced its controversies, reinvention, and internal conflict, and yet it has endured. And through its endurance, it has shaped quietly and steadily the ideas of civil society across many countries. So looking at the history of Blue Lodge Masonry, we realize that the fraternity is anything but static. This idea that we have today that we cannot change is a fool's errand. Just because it didn't work for other fraternities doesn't mean it won't work for ours. And these changes will continue to unfold. Every candidate who knocks at the door adds a new chapter. Every lodge meeting continues a tradition stretching back centuries, and every Mason who reflects on the square, the compasses, and the volume of sacred law participates in the same search for meaning that shaped the craft in its earliest days. John Dickie's The Craft presents Freemasonry not as a secretive curiosity, but as a significant force in global history. By understanding that history, we better understand what it means to be a Mason today. The Blue Lodge is our foundation. It's our shared home. And is a legacy of countless generations who sought to build themselves and their societies into something better. When we look at the history of Freemasonry, we see the history of change. From a craft guild to a tool for political gain to more of a philosophical fraternity. We see Freemasonry changing and adapting to the times, and at the same time, creating influences and developing systems that would be influential upon the larger society. When we sit here and we look at a meeting in a small town where the brothers get together, they don't change offices, it seems like they're just keeping the lights on. That's always been part of the fraternity. Those same small groups will develop new ideas and new things, and we need to be open to them. Not that we need to change. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is that we need to be open to change, because it's very quickly evident, just looking at our history, that the reason we exist today is that we didn't become irrelevant. And we didn't become irrelevant because we adapted, because we shifted, because we changed, because of the people we attracted and the people that those people became. Legacy is important. Growth and membership is important. But the lessons are the foundation of Freemasonry. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of the craft. Hopefully, this exploration will deepen your understanding and inspire you to continue your pursuit of light. And if you're interested, the book is John Dickie-The Craft. It is available on Amazon. It's available all over the place. I strongly recommend, if you are interested in the history of Freemasonry, you read it, because we have just generalized it in very simple terms here. There is a lot more to be gleaned, and we haven't even gotten into York Rite, Scottish Rite, etc. So please, go out, read the book, borrow it from someone, and expand your knowledge of Freemasonry. Thank you for joining me, Brother Chris Leakey, and the entire Further Light team on your quest to find more light through Masonry.
Are you interested in learning more about Freemasonry in Wisconsin? Visit wisconsinmasons.org to learn more about Masonry and access further educational content and more light. Once again, that address is wimasons.org. Any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at education@wisconsinmasons.org. And thank you for listening.